A Florida woman beat out 933 other competitors and was crowned the 2025 Python Challenge champ.
That's her right behind us. Now, she caught 60 Burmese pythons over 10 days out in the Everglades.
Florida's swamps might look like untouched wilderness, but recent footage reveals an aftermath nobody saw coming. From invasive Burmese pythons slinking through the Everglades to disappearing wildlife and surprising shifts in the ecosystem, these waters are hiding a dramatic story. What seems like ordinary swamp life masks a chain reaction of ecological chaos, human encounters, and unexpected lessons for conservation. The footage doesn't just show nature, it exposes the hidden consequences of disruption in America's wildest wetlands. The invasive monster. Few creatures have stirred as much fear and fascination in Florida as the Burmese python. Native to Southeast Asia, these giant snakes didn't belong in the Everglades, but a mix of exotic pet trade, hurricanes, and accidental releases set the stage for one of the most dramatic invasions in North American wildlife history. By the 90s, these snakes had established themselves in the swamps, and since then, their numbers have exploded. Burmese pythons are perfectly adapted to the swamp environment. Their camouflage allows them to blend seamlessly with reeds, water, and cypress roots. They can go weeks without food, tolerate fluctuating temperatures, and are powerful predators capable of taking down mammals far larger than themselves. This makes them nearly unstoppable once they find a suitable habitat. Biologists estimate tens of thousands of these snakes roam the Everglades today, though exact numbers are hard to determine because of their secretive nature. The ecological impact has been staggering. Small and medium-sized mammals, such as rabbits, raccoons, and marsh rabbits, have seen dramatic population declines in areas with high python density. Birds and other ground-dwelling creatures are also affected. This decline cascades through the food web. Predators that normally feed on these mammals struggle, while plants that rely on animal seed dispersal are also impacted. Essentially, the python invasion disrupts every layer of the ecosystem, creating ripple effects that scientists are still mapping today. Efforts to control these snakes are ongoing but challenging. Florida's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, organizes python hunts, offers incentives for removal, and researches new strategies to track and manage the population. Drone footage and motion-activated cameras, like the ones capturing the effects in recent videos, have been invaluable for understanding their movement patterns and estimating numbers. Still, even the most aggressive removal efforts can barely keep pace with their rapid reproduction and stealthy behavior. The Burmese python's invasion also highlights the dangers of human negligence. Many of these snakes were once pets, released or escaped into the wild. Hurricanes like Andrew in 1992 scattered exotic animals from private collections, unintentionally seeding new populations. Once in the Everglades, the snakes thrived, exploiting abundant prey and limited competition from other top predators. The Burmese python is more than just a large snake. It's a symbol of ecological disruption. Its presence shows how fragile even vast wilderness areas like the Everglades can be when invasive species enter the equation. The results seen in recent footage is a stark reminder that one species can change everything, from animal populations to plant growth and even waterway health. Understanding and controlling these snakes is not just about protecting native wildlife, it's about preserving the delicate balance of one of America's most unique ecosystems. But the pythons are only the beginning. What happens next in Florida's swamps is even more unexpected. The python disruption, an aftermath. Footage from Florida's swamps has become more than just viral clips. It's a window into the unexpected aftermath of the Burmese python invasion. Early drone shots revealed the first sightings, with snakes slithering silently through mangroves and marshes, disappearing almost like shadows. Scientists pored over these videos, mapping movements and realizing just how quickly the invaders were spreading. The footage sparked both awe and concern, showing a predator that had no natural enemies in the area. Later clips captured human encounters, sometimes tense, sometimes surreal. Hunters, researchers, and even local residents were filmed crossing paths with massive pythons, carefully removing them or simply keeping a safe distance while the camera recorded every motion. These videos highlighted the hidden risks of living near the swamps and the growing interaction between humans and wildlife. Time-lapse and drone footage further revealed ecological changes. Areas once teeming with raccoons, marsh rabbits, and birds suddenly eerily empty. Native vegetation appeared overgrown in some spots, stripped bare in others, as invasive species shifted the landscape. Technological monitoring itself was caught on camera. Researchers using drones and motion-activated devices tracking snakes in real time, offering the public a rare glimpse into the high-tech efforts helping control the invasion. The Burmese python invasion is just the opening act of Florida's swamp drama. Once these massive snakes establish themselves, the consequences ripple through the ecosystem in ways most people don't see. It's not just a predator eating prey, it's a complete reshaping of the swamp's balance. Small mammals, birds, and reptiles disappear from areas with high python density, causing cascading effects that extend far beyond any single species. Researchers have documented dramatic declines in marsh rabbits, raccoons, opossums, and bobcats in python-heavy zones. For birds, the effect is equally dire. Ground-nesting species struggle to survive, and even some wading birds are impacted as prey animals vanish. When mammals and birds decline, predators that normally depend on them, like bobcats, foxes, and hawks, face food shortages. This leads to a chain reaction: starvation, migration, and reduced reproduction. Suddenly, the entire predator-prey balance that once defined the swamp starts to wobble. Vegetation and soil are affected too. With fewer mammals roaming and grazing, certain plant species lose their main dispersers. Seeds aren't spread effectively, altering plant composition over time. Some plants overgrow in areas where they were once controlled by grazing, while others vanish. The undergrowth thickens or thins unevenly, changing soil stability, water absorption, and even fire patterns in the dry season. In essence, the python's presence indirectly shapes the physical landscape of the Everglades. Hydrology is another surprising consequence. Small mammals and burrowing animals contribute to soil aeration and water drainage. Their decline can subtly alter water flow, especially in marshes, creating stagnant pools in some areas and faster runoff in others. These changes impact fish populations, amphibians, and even nutrient distribution, further complicating the ecological aftermath. Secondary invasive species also take advantage. Some non-native fish, birds, and plants thrive in areas destabilized by the pythons. For example, exotic plants may colonize spaces where native vegetation has struggled, and other invasive predators can capitalize on the void left by displaced native animals. This creates a feedback loop. The ecosystem is not just disrupted, it's evolving in unexpected ways, often in favor of other invasive species. Scientists rely heavily on footage, tracking devices, and camera traps to understand these cascading effects. Drone footage reveals the movement of pythons, areas of concentrated predation, and even behavioral adaptations like nocturnal hunting to avoid human interference. Ground surveys and telemetry studies complement this, giving researchers a more complete picture of how the Everglades is changing in real time. The human dimension overlaps with these ecological shifts. Disrupted prey populations affect hunting and local food chains, while altered waterways influence flooding, tourism, and even mosquito populations. In many cases, locals notice the changes before scientists do. Animals that once were common disappear, water patterns shift, and encounters with pythons become more frequent. Ultimately, the python invasion is a textbook example of how one invasive predator can create a ripple effect across an entire ecosystem. It's a chain reaction of disruption that spans species, vegetation, soil, and water. The things captured in Florida swamp footage isn't just shocking visuals, it's evidence of an ecological crisis unfolding before our eyes. And if you thought the impact was purely natural, the human side of the story makes the aftermath even more complicated. Human impact, swamps, safety, and surveillance. Florida's swamps aren't just home to wildlife. They're also a space where humans live, work, and explore. The Burmese python invasion has made this interaction far more complicated. While these snakes generally avoid humans, their sheer size and stealth create risks that locals, hunters, and researchers can't ignore. Encounters with massive, multi-foot-long snakes have become increasingly common, sometimes ending in injury or panic. Even if bites are rare, the psychological impact is real. Residents know that lurking beneath the water or vegetation could be a predator capable of swallowing small pets or livestock. Tourism, an essential part of Florida's economy, is also affected. Tourists visiting the Everglades or taking airboat tours are sometimes warned about python sightings, adding an unexpected tension to what should be a recreational experience. The wildlife that draws visitors, raccoons, alligators, birds, and fish, are also being affected, reducing the richness of the ecosystem that tourists came to see. Hunting traditions are disrupted as well. Small game populations have declined, meaning local hunters face scarcer targets, and the balance of predator-prey relationships has changed hunting patterns and rules. To understand and manage these threats, surveillance and monitoring have become essential. Motion-activated cameras, drones, and GPS tagging help track python movements and population density. Some footage, like the viral videos showing pythons slithering silently through swamps, provides critical insight into behavior patterns, hunting strategies, and habitat preferences. These technologies not only help scientists manage the invasion, but also provide evidence of the ecological consequence in action. Footage from remote areas reveals the scope of the disruption, showing areas once teeming with wildlife now eerily quiet or overrun with invasive species. Humans are also actively involved in controlling the python population. Florida's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, offers bounty programs, python removal hunts, and educational initiatives aimed at preventing new releases from the pet trade. Volunteers and professionals alike venture into the swamps to remove snakes, often working under dangerous conditions. These efforts highlight the ethical and practical challenges of human intervention. How do you control a species without further disrupting the ecosystem? How do you balance animal welfare with environmental necessity? The human impact isn't limited to safety and ecology. It also has economic and emotional dimensions. Residents and researchers witness firsthand the effects on native wildlife, the challenge of removing invasive predators, and the broader environmental consequences. For many, the swamps are part of their identity, a natural heritage they feel compelled to protect. Watching pythons dominate and native species decline is more than a scientific concern, it's personal. At the same time, human activity has contributed to the problem. Exotic pets, habitat modification, and climate change have all amplified the aftermath of the python invasion. The very people who are now working to mitigate the issue helped create the conditions that allowed it to flourish. This intertwining of human and natural factors makes Florida's swamps a living laboratory for understanding invasive species, ecosystem management, and conservation ethics. In short, the results captured in the clips are as much about humans as it is about wildlife. It's about how people respond, adapt, and intervene in an environment suddenly changed by one invasive predator. Safety concerns, economic impacts, and ethical dilemmas all converge in the swamps, reminding us that ecological disruption is rarely limited to plants and animals. It always reaches human communities too. Climate change and swamp dynamics. The Florida Everglades have always been a unique ecosystem, shaped by water, heat, and seasonal rhythms. But climate change is rewriting the rules, and it's making life easier for Burmese pythons and harder for native wildlife. Rising average temperatures mean that winters are no longer harsh enough to naturally limit python survival. Areas that were once too cold for these snakes are now prime hunting grounds, allowing them to expand their range further north. Drone and camera footage from previously uncolonized swamps show pythons appearing in places that were thought safe for decades. Rainfall patterns are shifting too. Prolonged droughts dry up marshes, concentrating wildlife in shrinking pools of water. This makes it easier for pythons to locate prey, amplifying their impact on already stressed populations. Conversely, periods of extreme flooding force animals to relocate, often into human-populated areas, increasing encounters between people and pythons. Footage capturing these movements highlights how climate variability intensifies the byproduct in ways that weren't immediately obvious to researchers when the invasion first began. Vegetation is also affected. Certain plants thrive during wetter years, while others suffer, changing the cover and camouflage opportunities for both predators and prey. Pythons benefit from dense foliage, which allows them to remain unseen while hunting. Meanwhile, native species that rely on specific plants for food, nesting, or protection may struggle to adapt to the changing vegetation patterns. The footage often shows empty marshes and disturbed plant life, subtly indicating the invisible consequences of climate-driven changes. Additionally, climate change interacts with invasive species in surprising ways. For example, warmer temperatures may accelerate python metabolism, increasing feeding frequency. Exotic prey species, like non-native rodents and amphibians, may also thrive under new climate conditions, further fueling the python population boom. In contrast, native species that evolved under stable seasonal conditions are less adaptable, leading to sharper declines. Watching footage from the swamps, researchers notice these patterns. Some areas, once vibrant with small mammals, are eerily quiet, while exotic species appear more abundant. Ultimately, climate change doesn't just support pythons, it amplifies the entire chain reaction in the swamps. Predator-prey imbalances, vegetation shifts, hydrological changes, and increased human encounters all intertwine. It's a dynamic, ongoing aftermath that grows more unpredictable with every passing year. Scientists warn that if climate trends continue, the Everglades may face a new baseline of ecological disruption, one that makes the current python crisis look minor in comparison. Even beyond human and python conflicts, the footage reveals lessons about the swamp itself and what it can teach us about resilience and recovery. Lessons from the swamp. What the footage teaches us. Florida's swamp footage doesn't just document wildlife, it tells a story about resilience, disruption, and the delicate balance of ecosystems. Scientists and conservationists are learning more from these videos than they could from traditional field surveys alone. The footage captures behaviors and patterns of Burmese pythons, displaced native species, and the subtle changes in vegetation and waterways, offering a window into the repercussions that's both unexpected and instructive. One key lesson is how interconnected the swamp really is. When pythons decimate mammal populations, the effects ripple outward. Predators like bobcats and alligators may struggle to find prey. Birds that relied on ground mammals for food or seed dispersal are affected. Even insects and plant life are indirectly influenced as the food web shifts. Observing these interactions through footage allows scientists to see the consequences in real time, rather than relying solely on periodic field sampling. Another insight comes from python behavior itself. The footage shows how adaptable these snakes are. They can hunt in water, camouflage perfectly in dense vegetation, and even alter their activity patterns to avoid humans. Understanding this adaptability is critical for developing more effective management strategies. Drone surveys and motion sensor cameras have revealed that some pythons travel further and hunt more aggressively than previously thought, which explains why traditional removal efforts sometimes fall short. The human element is also evident. Researchers, park rangers, and volunteers studying the swamps are learning how human activity affects both invasive and native species. Changes in water flow due to development, pollution, or recreational activity can inadvertently favor invasive species like pythons, while native animals may struggle to adapt. By combining footage with on-the-ground observations, conservationists can better predict where the ecosystem is most vulnerable and which interventions will be most effective. Furthermore, the footage teaches patience and observation. Swamps are complex, slow-moving systems where change often occurs over years, not days. Watching the effects unfold over time shows how species interactions, reproductive cycles, and environmental conditions combine to shape the landscape. It also highlights the importance of long-term monitoring. One snapshot or short visit can't reveal the full story of an ecosystem under stress. Finally, the videos underscore a broader lesson about human responsibility. The invasion of Burmese pythons didn't happen in isolation. It was fueled by pet releases, habitat changes, and global trade. Seeing the consequences firsthand emphasizes that human decisions have long-lasting, sometimes unforeseen, ecological impacts. Conservation efforts aren't just about removing snakes, they're about understanding the entire system and preventing future disruptions. In short, the swamp footage is a classroom. It teaches scientists, policymakers, and the public how ecosystems respond to invasive species, human activity, and environmental change. Every movement captured, whether a python hunting, a raccoon avoiding predation, or a marsh flooded differently than before, is a lesson in resilience, adaptation, and the intricate web of life in one of America's most unique landscapes. Yet, even amid disruption, the swamps reveal surprising allies and opportunities that could turn the tide against the pythons. Surprisingly, beneficial effects and ecological opportunities. Even in the chaos of Florida's swamps, the aftermath of the Burmese python invasion has revealed unexpected opportunities. While the initial impact seems purely destructive, some native species and ecosystems are showing surprising resilience. Certain predators, like alligators and large raptors, have begun preying on juvenile or smaller pythons, demonstrating that nature can fight back. These predator-prey dynamics, while slow to develop, suggest the swamps may eventually find a new balance if given time and protection. The footage also provides a unique scientific opportunity. Watching pythons hunt, mate, and interact with their environment has offered insights into their behavior, genetics, and ecological role, data that was nearly impossible to gather before drones and remote cameras. Researchers can track their movement patterns, understand reproductive hotspots, and even study the impact of invasive species on disease spread or ecosystem health. In some ways, the snakes are teaching scientists more about adaptation, resilience, and species interactions than any controlled laboratory could. There's also a silver lining for conservation and education. The dramatic footage captures public attention, raising awareness about invasive species and the fragility of ecosystems. Schools, wildlife organizations, and ecotourism groups use these videos to show why protecting native species and habitats is critical. By transforming the crisis into a teaching tool, Florida's swamps become not just a site of destruction, but a living classroom for the public. Tourism and local engagement also benefit in subtle ways. Swamp tours, guided hikes, and educational programs capitalize on the public's fascination with pythons and other exotic wildlife. While it may sound counterintuitive, highlighting the problem can fund conservation efforts and motivate people to participate in mitigation programs. In other words, the aftermath isn't purely negative. It generates community involvement and resources for ecological restoration. Finally, restoration efforts offer hope. By understanding which areas are most affected and which species are at risk, scientists can target interventions such as reintroducing native prey species, improving water flow, or creating barriers to prevent python expansion. Combined with natural predation and ongoing removal programs, these strategies suggest that Florida's swamps may not just survive, they could adapt to the invasion, emerging as stronger, more resilient ecosystems. The key takeaway is that even in the midst of ecological disaster, opportunities for recovery and learning exist. The swamp footage may initially shock viewers, but it also inspires hope, showing that careful observation, human intervention, and natural adaptation can gradually reverse some of the damage caused by invasive species. The story of Florida's swamps is a mix of destruction, resilience, and lessons that extend far beyond the Everglades. Other invasive species in the swamps. Burmese pythons may get the most attention, but Florida's swamps are full of other invaders quietly reshaping the ecosystem. From cane toads to apple snails, nutria, and exotic fish, these species exploit the same disrupted habitats that pythons thrive in, creating a web of unexpected consequences. Together, they amplify the things that the recent footage so vividly reveals. Cane toads are a perfect example. Originally introduced to control pests, they quickly became pests themselves. They compete with native amphibians for food and breeding spaces, and their toxic skin can poison potential predators, including birds and reptiles. Apple snails, another notorious invader, chew through native vegetation, stripping marshes of plant cover that wildlife relies on for shelter and food. Their proliferation affects fish and bird populations, which depend on the vegetation for nesting or hunting grounds. Nutria, Large semi-aquatic rodents from South America also leave a mark. They burrow through banks and feed heavily on roots and shoots, destabilizing wetland soils and altering water flow. These changes can worsen flooding and make the landscape more favorable for invasive plants while challenging native species. Exotic fish, including tilapia and walking catfish, compete with native fish and disrupt the natural food web, sometimes reducing populations of species important to both humans and wildlife. What's striking is how these invasive species interact with pythons. For instance, some exotic rodents serve as easy prey for pythons, supporting their population boom. Meanwhile, altered vegetation caused by snails and nutria can change hunting dynamics, making it easier or harder for different predators to survive. The footage often captures these interactions, like pythons stalking areas stripped bare by snails or nutria, showing the unseen chain reactions across multiple species. This ecosystem-level disruption highlights how one invasion can open the door to others. Each new species alters food webs, habitat structures, and predator-prey relationships, creating a compounding effect. The combined presence of multiple invaders makes restoration more difficult and requires a multifaceted approach, from removal programs to habitat rehabilitation. Finally, these species also have human implications. Cane toads and exotic fish can affect local fisheries, while nutria damage levees and private property. The scenes in the footage aren't limited to wildlife. It's a visible warning of how interconnected human and ecological systems are, and how one invasive introduction can ripple across the swamp in ways nobody anticipated. While invasive species create chaos, technology and human ingenuity are stepping in to monitor, manage, and maybe even reverse some of the damage. Human solutions and technology fighting back in the swamps. The Florida swamps might seem like a wild, uncontrollable frontier, but humans are not sitting idle. Advances in technology and innovative solutions are turning the tide against invasive species like Burmese pythons, and the recent footage shows how these efforts are changing the game. From drones hovering above the canopy to AI algorithms analyzing snake movements, humans are using every tool possible to understand and manage the results. Drone surveillance has become a cornerstone of monitoring efforts. High-resolution aerial footage allows researchers to cover vast stretches of swamp that would take weeks to survey on foot or by boat. Thermal imaging technology helps detect the heat signatures of snakes hidden in dense vegetation or submerged in water, revealing their exact location. This not only helps in removal, but also provides data on population density, hunting patterns, and habitat preferences, information that was impossible to gather before. Camera traps, motion sensor devices complement aerial monitoring. These devices capture images of both invasive and native species, providing insight into how wildlife is responding to the python's presence. The footage has revealed unexpected behaviors, nocturnal hunting, unusual travel patterns, and interactions with other invasive species. These observations guide conservation strategies and help scientists predict future ecological shifts. Citizen science programs are another critical tool. Locals and tourists can report python sightings through apps or hotlines, feeding real-time data into databases used by wildlife agencies. This crowdsourced approach expands the reach of researchers while engaging the public in conservation efforts. Incentive programs, such as bounties for captured pythons, encourage participation and raise awareness about the invasive species problem. Beyond monitoring, there are active removal efforts. Trained professionals and volunteers conduct python hunts, often in challenging and dangerous swamp conditions. Some teams use trained dogs to track snakes, while others employ specialized traps or tracking devices. These efforts are risky, but necessary, as every snake removed reduces pressure on native wildlife and helps restore ecological balance. Technology is also aiding long-term solutions. GPS collars on pythons help track movement over months, revealing seasonal behaviors and migration patterns. AI models analyze this data to predict where snakes are likely to appear next, allowing preemptive intervention. Restoration of affected habitats, such as replanting native vegetation and stabilizing waterways, complements these efforts, ensuring that removal programs have lasting impact. Ultimately, humans are learning to coexist with and manage Florida's swamps rather than trying to control them completely. The combination of technology, community involvement, and on-the-ground action is helping mitigate the damage caused by invasive species while providing valuable lessons for future conservation efforts. The footage isn't just shocking, it's a blueprint for how science and human ingenuity can respond to ecological crises, turning the aftermath into a story of action and hope. And while technology battles invasive species, Florida's swamps still hold mysteries and surprises that continue to astonish scientists and locals alike. Future scenarios and conservation outlook. Looking ahead, Florida's swamps face a crossroads. If Burmese pythons continue to spread unchecked, the consequences could be severe. Native mammals, birds, and reptiles may decline further, some possibly reaching local extinction. Predator-prey relationships that have evolved over centuries and could collapse, allowing other invasive species to thrive. Over time, entire sections of the Everglades could transform into a simplified ecosystem dominated by a few resilient species, hardly the diverse, thriving wetlands that once defined Florida. But there's reason for cautious optimism. Natural predators like alligators and large raptors are slowly learning to prey on juvenile pythons, adding a layer of biological control. Human interventions are proving effective in many areas as well. Targeted removal programs, bounty hunts, and habitat restoration projects have already reduced snake densities in hotspots. Reintroducing native prey species and stabilizing water levels can help restore balance, creating conditions where the ecosystem can self-correct over time. Technology and research will play a key role in shaping the future. GPS tracking, drone surveillance, and AI modeling allow scientists to predict python movements, identify vulnerable areas, and allocate resources more efficiently. Public engagement programs, like citizen science reporting apps and educational campaigns, ensure the broader community contributes to long-term management. Policy decisions will also be critical. Stricter regulations on exotic pet ownership, rapid response protocols for escaped animals, and habitat conservation measures can prevent new invasions and limit existing threats. Protecting native biodiversity and maintaining ecological resilience will require collaboration between scientists, policymakers, and the public. In short, Florida's swamps are at a tipping point. Without intervention, the python invasion could cause irreversible changes. But with careful management, technological innovation, and informed policy, the Everglades have the potential to recover, adapt, and continue serving as one of America's most unique and vital ecosystems. Even with these strategies, the swamp has a few surprises left that remind us why Florida's wilderness is always full of the unexpected. Florida's swamps tell a story of disruption, resilience, and adaptation. Footage of pythons, invasive species, and human intervention captures the ecological aftermath like never before, showing both danger and hope. With science, technology, and community action, the Everglades can recover, proving that even in chaos, nature and humans can find balance. Stay tuned for more wild discoveries from swamps around the world. Subscribe now to not miss future uploads.